Sounds like she's dying.
Hi, everybody. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your K9.
And Joanne Stoike with For Better, For Worse.
And Lisa Matasco with Canine Defined.
Hello. Today we're going to be talking about dog to dog resource guarding, which is very different from people, uh, dog to people resource guarding. So I just wanted to touch base because it's interesting how it comes up and when it shows up and how it shows up. So we wanted to kind of address it, especially those of you who have multiple dog homes or have new puppies that have bought a new dog or bought a new dog into the home, or added to your pack, which is kind of what Lisa and I and Joanne, even though Joanne's have has been added for a while, kind of have to deal with. Sometimes you don't have an issue with things, and other times you do. So, and a lot of people think that resource guarding, human dog to human resource guarding, is the same as dog to dog resource guarding. And it's really, really not. It's completely different. And just because a dog resource guards from other dogs does not mean it's going to resource guard from people, and vice versa. So it can resource guard from one, just dogs or just people or both, right? But today we're specifically going to focus on the dog to dog piece because that's people get that's where altercations come about and issues happen, and a lot of this some of the dog to dog stuff is a little is preventable, or you can manage it um to a certain extent, of course, right? So um so i with people resource guarding, and I don't know, Joanne and Lisa, if you would agree, when dogs resource guard from people, it's usually a very low confidence dog for the most part. They're really unsure, and it's really hard to predict why some dogs resource guard from people and other don't. A lot of people think, oh, the dog was starved, or the dog was not, whatever. They have all these things, but that's not true. We have many dogs that have been starved or whatever, and they don't resource guard, right? Um, the dog to dog, and again, I don't know what you guys think. I don't I don't know if it's always a low confidence thing for dog to dog. I don't know.
So I think for people, it becomes like, so the most recent one, and I've seen it, a correlation between dogs that are not highly sociable or, sociable, but yet not, maybe not super tolerant of people, they end up having a little bit of concerns. So the recent dog that I had, who was 6 months old, rescued as a puppy, rescued as a stray at 2 months old, came to a home, lived with the house, was super impulsive, not super sociable. And then at the same time, she was also um, very, her tolerance level wasn't great. She was independent. It's just kind of things that make her a little more tricky. Nice. Very nice. A little more tricky with other people and stuff. And so I had to work really hard. It wasn't until like week 2 that she ended up starting to say, hey, what are we doing? You know what I mean? But yet today, before she went home, I went to go take her empty food bowl out, and she's like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Seriously? We've been doing this like forever,
Hmm.
and all the time that you've known me." And so I think a lot of times with people to people, dog to people resource guarding, what ends up happening, the dogs are testing it, especially around the teenage time, and they're like, if you're serious and I can scare you off of it, then we're good and you get me, right? So, but I also find that dog to dog is a little different. It's more statusy type of
Hmm. Yeah,
stuff that you're dealing with.
yeah. Do you agree, Joanne?
Um,
Because I've seen some pretty confident dogs guard against other dogs, but not against people. A lot of times.
yeah, see, and I find it to be the opposite, right? I mean, the people thing, I've seen a bunch of different ways, right? Because you can have a perfectly confident dog and create resource guarding real easy, doing stuff when they're younger, right? Stealing things, ripping things out of their mouth, and the dog wouldn't have never had an issue
Hmm.
outside of the way humans handled it. Um, but the dog stuff, I mean, to me, when I see a confident dog I just haven't noticed them feel the need to guard stuff, right? Like I have seen a confident dog be a jerk. Like my first dog was like that. She'd put her bone in the doorway, right? And she'd lay back and she'd just wait. And as a dog came by, she was like, bah! Like, but she'd totally do it on purpose. It was comical, right?
It was like fun for her.
Yeah, it totally was fun for her. But again, it wasn't guarding. She was playing a game, right, with the other dogs. Where when the dogs truly, to me, the dog stuff, when they truly have the hovers and the stares and all that, I don't know. From what I've seen, I really have seen it as a lower confidence dog.
Well, no, I think confidence plays a big part in either scenario, right? But I haven't seen it often. And yes, I would say majority of the resource guarding, whether it's dog to people or dog to dog, have a lower confidence level anyway. Well, in my case, my little foster beagle is starting to show now that she's more comfortable here, is starting to show more signs of guarding from the other dogs. But it's not a very severe case, but you could see she's starting to test it. And like Lisa said, she's a little over a year. So now I think now that she's a little more comfortable, she's kind of seeing how that works. And so now she doesn't guard from people at all. Like she's never even remotely even shown signs of that. Right. So, but she does do it to the other dogs. And interestingly enough, she does it to dogs that are the very young, which is my young puppy, and the very old, which is Rousseau.
The ones she can take out if needed.
And again, you could tell she's testing it very much so, which is interesting because her guarding is it's low level, but still it's there. So I notice it. So yeah, okay. Because I would say I've seen some confident dogs like, and I guess it depends on the dog that's trying to get their stuff or whatever. So I thought that was interesting. So one of the things that a lot of the reasons dogs resource guard from each other, from other dogs, is to guard their resources. So we see it as a bad thing, but really it's pretty normal dog behavior, right? So it's not like it's a weird thing or there's something wrong with your dog, or like in this case with my beagle, I don't think there's anything wrong with her. It's just she's, this is kind of how she's managing her world. They don't always. It's in the animal kingdom. It's a management of all the resources, right? And this is what they're doing, is managing the resources. So it's about getting them to understand, even though for us it's not acceptable behavior, but for them it's absolutely normal.
But I also think we have to think about it because we do it every day. Even when we're driving, you're like, hey, you're in my lane, get out, right? I mean, we do it naturally. It is not an uncommon behavior. The difference is the economy of energy, right? So like if the dog throws up a bluster and stuff like that, and that deters the other dog, well, then it's worked, right? Because to go to the extent in the wild for any animal, to go to the extent of complete fighting and carrying on, you're risking injury, potential death, stuff like that. And I think in the dog world, it's different. And I also think that like Riff, who's like 4.5 months old, maybe right now, he like resource guards his food. He's like, nobody can touch it, but he's in a contained area. So if I brought him out, he's like, okay, you can have it. He's like, I'm little, I could die. It's okay. You can have it, Right. Whereas like if it were one of my bigger dogs, or like Lacey, for example, she'd throw up this big bluster to be like, you can't have it, it is mine. And she's like growling and hovering and throwing this huge whole like behavior out. The other dogs are like, okay, that looks like we might die, therefore it's not worth it. Right. So, and I think it totally depends on the savviness of the dogs in the home, like what they understand, the severity, the sincerity of the dog that is exhibiting those behaviors.
Yeah, because, well, Joanne with Roscoe, she'll show a video. He'll guard from Noah, but he ain't guarding from fire.
He's like,
He
"Shoot,
actually
get
does
me."
guard from fire, but again, fire's an old lady, right? And so she looks at him, she's like, "You're stupid." Like, and right, she's like, I don't want that anyway, right? So but the guarding is different, right? So he'll look at her like, she's like,
No.
whatever, right?
Right.
You don't get the super hover and the protection and all of that.
And I think that's important for people to know, like the sincerity of guarding, right?
Yes.
Because there is a difference. It is such a difference. Like, grr, do you care? Right? It's the whole hovering, and then do you care?
That's
And the other dog's like, I don't care. And they're like, okay, I don't care.
Rizzo.
You know what I mean?
That's
It's-
Rizzo. She'll guard it, and then everybody's like, "We don't even want that. Go away."
Okay.
Like, good. I'm going to take it back to my corner.
Whereas, like, if it's super serious, and like, so the we were talking about the rescue puppy that was with me, and she, like Ripley, she was like in the water. She's like, "Grr," in the water. I'm like, we don't do that. And I just moved her back, and I was like, the other dogs get to drink, and she's like, I don't like this. And I'm like, well, life's hard. Don't do that. And can you sit? And then the other dogs drank. They moved away, and then I could let her drink. So I think it's important for people to realize the severity in terms of body language. Like when a dog is really serious,
Mm-hmm.
the like the whole like, do you care is not serious. It's a testing moment, right?
Mhm.
Versus when the dogs are like, I will kill you if you come near this.
Right.
And they're super frozen. That's a whole nother story.
Right. And you could tell, like with my beagle, she doesn't freeze. She just goes blah blah blah, and it's not very serious, but you could tell she's in that testing mode, which is really annoying. So I was telling Joanne, I go, I gotta keep her alive, because if she does it to one of my older adult dogs,
Right.
we might have issue, right? So now we're really trying to, and I do step in there. Because the two dogs that she's guarding against are not going to be able to defend themselves. So I'm not going to let them work it out. I will step in and interrupt it and redirect her, and all that. We just don't let them figure it out. And usually what it means for her is she gets to, the interaction ceases and she stops playing. Her playtime is interrupted and she gets a timeout. And so that seems to have been much better in the last couple of days. Her guarding has become more, a little less intense. So I'm guessing she's starting to figure it out, but it's something to watch. So, but one of the things that we did want you to understand, that this behavior is absolutely normal in dogs. It's just that how far you let it go. I'm not a big fan of letting them work it out, because nothing good ever comes of it. So I don't do that. And the other thing is, sometimes when that happens, people have missed a lot of
Body language prior to.
So I want to show you a video. It's not somebody we know, but it's a really good video with some information, with some body language, and how the dogs work it out, right? And the big problem is, the resource guarding isn't a problem or whatever if you have a dog that'll be like, if you have dogs, if that pack dynamics are like, we don't want that anyway. Like with my Rizzo, she's been guarding that her whole life. Nobody cares about what she has, so nobody wants it. And so she's like, so it really reduces because nobody wants it. Versus dogs that are real serious that I've worked with, that, well, a lot of times if you catch it early, you can avoid a problem. And I am big on management. They eat separately in the beginning. Things are put away and maintained, especially when you're bringing a new dog into your home, whether it's a puppy or a rescue dog. Because that'll prevent all kinds of behavior, right? Or problems that you don't currently have, that you don't want to have, because that's a pain. Okay, so I'm going to play. Wait. Okay. Sorry, you guys. I gotta. Oh, here. Okay, ready? All right. So what did you see there? I'm going to leave it to you. I'm going to play it again. Hold on. So this was captured. This person captured it. She was doing something else. She was doing something else, trying to film on how to do Kongs, and this just happened to happen between the two dogs. So what were yeah, you saw hard stare. What else did you see? He gets all the channels, Lisa.
He does.
Stillness, yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Stillness is number one, you guys. Stillness is not ever in any dog interactions. Would you agree, you guys, that
Mhm.
stillness is never ever a good thing? If a dog gets still, there's nothing good's gonna come of that, whether it's to you, another dog, or whatever. Frozen.
There's
Yep.
a question like, do you care that I'm doing this? Or, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. But it's one of those things. Yep. Whale eye. Yep. You got some whale eye going on there. So luckily, so it would have been a very different, interaction had that little cattle dog decided I'm going to take it
Yep.
anyway.
absolutely.
That would have been a different here.
But that cattle dog was like so polite and saying, do you care? Oh, you do? Okay, I'll step back.
Yeah, right.
You know what I
And
mean?
so,
It's like,
yep.
yeah. Is this okay? Do you care?
Yeah.
Care.
So it was asking that question, right?
Oh, is this okay? No, it's not yours. What a jerk, though. I'm sorry, but I'm like, to me, I'm like, what a jerk that dog is to be like, you can't have it.
Yeah, and when he already
Not
had
even what's in the possession, right?
right,
Mhm.
right. He already had the possession of the item, and he decided he's going to guard it, right? So that's a very interesting situation, right? When that happens. But any kind of stillness or any kind of freezing, whether it's to a person or a dog, and if you choose to challenge that, if the dog freezes or the other dog decides they're going to take them on, there's going to be a fight, right? And so as people and as dog trainers, we never engage that behavior. We never do, because it's you're gonna get bit. I mean, and you're gonna put the dog in a really bad situation where maybe it doesn't want to bite, but it's gonna.
Right.
So you need to always diffuse that situation. That's how we've managed not to get bit all these years, by not challenging the other dogs. But yeah, that's usually a pretty big sign. So when you guys are watching your dogs interact, that is one thing you definitely have to watch. What's the body language look like when they're playing? And just because they get along good for the first 5 or 10 minutes does not mean they're going to be okay for the next,
Right.
you know.
And age is a thing, right? So like as a teenager, they're going to be testing a lot more. So the dog that was with me, the rescue pup that was with me, she was 6 months old, and she was like, do you care? And my dogs are like, it's not worth it. It's not worth the economy of energy. Right. So they like step back. And so then, shush. And so then, and so then they just backed off and they let me deal with it. It's like, that's a thing. It's like, part of building a relationship with a dog is like saying, hey, I know this like looks terrible right now, but let me deal with it and address it. And then if you don't want to, like, you know what I mean? I guess to me, it's like, it's so important for relationships, to
Yeah.
like develop that piece of it where they're like, hey, mom, that dog's being nuts. And you're like, yes, I know. Let me address that for you,
Right. So that was that was really good, like up close video. Joanne shot some video today. But the body language in the video is extremely interesting and funny, and not, because Joanne is managing this situation really, really well with both dogs, so that there isn't there isn't a problem, right? But just an interesting with her own dogs and the foster dog.
Yeah.
How long have you had him now?
Oh gosh, at least 6 months, over 6 months, at least 6 months. It's been a while. And I will tell you, he was given up really because of resource guarding to people, right? He snapped at the kid. He had a pen and the kid was trying to get it from him. And so he came in with human resource guarding. And that's another Facebook Live. But what I found so interesting was a lot of how they dealt with it was no, blah, right? And they tried to steal it and grab it. And so when you do that, it makes the dog more protective of the item because you're going to take it and I'll just keep trying to protect it. Right. Which eventually drove him to snap. But here I'm like, oh, get over yourself. Stop it. Give it here. Come bring that here. Right. And instead of getting nasty with him, I'm like, come on now. And he's like, oh, okay. I have not had one problem with human resource guarding since he's been here. One time he was like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, nothing. Just give it to me. And he's like, oh, okay. And so we've just built that relationship of trust where it's like, stop, give me that. He's like, okay. All right. So toys, chews, those types of things are a big issue for him. Now with dogs, they weren't before because nobody cared, but I'll show you the video and then I'll tell you the story. So, okay.
Make it bigger.
So, I have a toy that Noah's just grabbing behind my back. As soon as he sees the toy, he's like, give me that. Noah's like, nope.
Make it bigger, Joanne. Can you make it bigger?
It's as big as it goes. I'm sorry.
And then he's having a good time. He's like, party of one. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
He totally is.
He is. He's like, and I go behind the gates. You can't catch me. And is that Roscoe that's following him, right?
Yep.
And you see Roscoe. Joanne, could you go back a little bit?
Sure.
And you see Roscoe's body language when he was chasing Noah out was a little stiffer than normal, right? That was, and I know it's hard to tell from the distance, but like, see, Noah's running.
So, and Noah's going to grab the toy right here. And as soon as he realizes he has a toy,
he gets a little.
Remember, Roscoe has a ball in his mouth, and then he's like,
up. Yeah.
I want that.
And you see how his body language got a little more tense, muscle,
Right.
right? A
A
little
little
more
stiffer.
Yeah.
Tail's up,
Not as
and kind of over
pliable.
the back.
Tail is up. Yep.
Mhm.
Up. And then the forward orientation. Then please help me. I don't know what to do with this. Ouch.
So at this point, you called them back, right,
I
Joanne?
did. I'm like, leave him alone and come here. He's like, ugh. So I'm holding on to his collar. As soon as Noah sees me hold him,
And he's like, yeah, get him out. Woo woo. Get him. Yeah, this is the best time ever.
He's such a brat.
That was a
so
little
you see
bit
the
of
body
naughty.
bump there?
Yep.
Show you again, just real quick. As he runs by, he nails him right here. Boop.
Boom. Yep. And then upright. Yep. Ouch.
He's like, I really just want to play with you. If you stop being a jerk.
He's like, yeah. And poor buddy. He's like, what a jerk. Having a good time, flaunting it.
Yes.
And Fire's like, could just somebody throw the ball.
Somebody kick my ball for me, please.
Shocking border collie behavior.
Yep. And so once they get close, I'll show you that again. I know it's small and it's hard to see, but like once Noah comes up here and Roscoe gets close enough, he's like, give me that. Noah's like, all right.
And you see how Joanne moved Noah away from that situation.
Yeah.
So this is where with dog to dog stuff, you really need to step in and kind of monitor it in the beginning. Not so much so that the dogs get freaked out, but enough that you have a little control over that environment and that situation with the dogs. Because if you just let them work it out, it doesn't, and it just gets. You can have some pretty knockdown dragouts on about resources, because for the dogs, don't forget it's a resource, right? So it's one of those. It's one of those things you have to step in and monitor in the beginning. So like especially now I have new dogs. So yeah, I never had problems before with my previous dogs with guarding from each other, but like Rizzo was the only one that would guard, but nobody cared about it. So it actually really stopped it because nobody wanted what she had. She wanted like this old stupid toy that I was like, oh, I don't even want that. so she so she wasn't worried about it. But now with the new dog, with Rumba, she's it's now we have to keep an eye on things and kind of monitor the interaction and step in as we need to, right?
How
Yep.
is she doing with the puppy?
Great. She's doing great. She
Boss.
loves she enjoys the dogs. Joanne was able to see she enjoys other dogs. But if there's a resource she wants, like a toy or whatever, she will go and correct it. She's not severe and it's not serious, but I don't want that. Number one, I have a young puppy. I can't have that. And then I have an old dog. I can't have that either. Um, so I have to really monitor that interaction with resources. So they get to play, but not with toys, for now. Maybe that'll change over time, but they don't play. I don't have toys. So that's actually one of the ways you can monitor it, right? Don't if they got resource guard if they guard resources, if the toy is a resource, then they don't have toys. They can play, wrestle, and that's what I do now. They play in the kitchen, they run around, they do a lot of chase, and that's fine. It works just fine. They play very, very nicely. I don't have any concerns, right? When you add a toy is when the things change. So what I do with that is I give them a toy and I just keep the interaction positive. Or if the puppy comes in, I make sure I reinforce her for not taking matters into her own hands. But it's still a process, right? Because she gets pretty aroused pretty quickly, so it's what it is. So
Yep. And I'll actually tell you what just happened to me with the two boys, which is these last 2 weeks have been insanely busy. I've been working really long hours from home. And so Noah is a lovely dog, but if he was gonna resource guard anything, it's gonna be me and my time and my space, right? He loves being by me, he loves being close to me. And Roscoe does have little moments, especially with what he finds really high value items. And so with the week being over, I gave them a bone and it was fine. Everybody's in their own place. No big deal. Well, I was tired and I didn't pick them up. And so what had happened was Roscoe was, on this side of me and he was laying on the dog bed and Noah was under my desk, just kind of hanging out. And for whatever reason, Roscoe stretched his legs. I don't even know, but he had the bone. And when he came close, he sort of, and I was not paying attention, right? Because I'm on the computer and I'm tired. And I didn't even notice that Roscoe was behind me. But all of a sudden, and it was pretty silent, right? All of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see Roscoe stiff, below me, and then Noah came flying out from under my desk. Bah, 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 bah. And he was air snapping, and he actually air snapped and got me in the side of the knee. Didn't break skin or anything. He left a pretty decent bruise. But it's really unlike Noah to instigate. And I think he was just protecting because he was trapped, right? He was under my desk. So he was like, listen, I'm not going to get, you're not going to trap me in here. So he was trying to find his way out. And that's why he reacted so aggressively. But right. I don't think that ever would have happened had I not been super busy for 2 weeks, really not paid very much attention to the dogs, so just because you have one thing doesn't mean the dog has the problem, right? You start to see things repetitively, but I'll also tell you it's changed the dynamics between those two boys. I've had him for 6 months. I've never had a problem between the two of them. And now, after that one little thing, even though nobody got hurt, it was a yelling match. They didn't even connect with each other, right? Now you sort of see it where.
Yeah, but I also, and here's my other thing, right, is like when you bring a dog into your home, whether it's like with a rescue or anything, and a rescue I think is different because of the history of behavior or potential behavior. It's like, what did they say? 3 days, 3 months, or 3 weeks, 3 months.
Yep.
And I've seen it go as long as 6 months before they all of a sudden start to see some of the sass come out, right?
Yep.
And you're like, oh, and there it is. So, but yeah, I agree. I think it's very interesting. Like, and I've seen, and I have video of some rules, what I called rule setting with Tenor and the puppy, because Tenor had a toy and he's like, you can't have this toy, it's mine. And the puppy's like, but I want it, you know, doing all his stupid little dance. And I'm like, well, he says no. So there you go. But I think it's different because as a puppy, they have a different point of reference than our dogs that are coming from rescue situations, right? They have no history to learn from or rely upon to help them figure life out. So, but yeah. So, and how long? You said it's been what, 6 months?
It's been over 6 months. And again, it's like I saw the hint of resource guarding when he came in, but I haven't. My dogs have never cared, right? They walk, and Noah has always been like, "Oh, you're dumb," and just walked away, right? But I think with the dynamics changing, with the human factor, right, and being trapped, I think those were the two things.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and for the beagle, in my case, she is a lot more comfortable now in my home. She's very, very happy here. She's figured out she's staying, clearly.
Right.
And so now she's starting to, and she's a teenage dog. She's, you know, she just turned a year in August, so she's very young yet. So she's a lot. So for me, a lot of it looks like testing, right? The old dogs. But so the concern I have is if she does that with my adult dogs, the result might not be
right.
So I am trying to intervene and help her make better choices and read, because the truth is, in her case, she doesn't really read body language very well. So
right, because it's a beagle. Like she was from a hoarding situation, right?
Oh, she was from the lab from Envigo.
Okay, so they were kenneled most of the time, right? So dog-to-dog interaction was not something they were able to like encounter. And yeah.
So she's lacking a lot of skills there. So while she doesn't do that to dogs outside of the home, but now she's a lot more comfortable with, you know, here. And it's only happened like 2 or 3 times, but every time I've been around. So I think, I'll be honest, I think I am more the resource for her. So my husband doesn't seem to have any trouble with her doing that.
But you show, and that's a thing too, right? It's like, you know, to me, it's like, I want dogs that get along and so forth. And you know, Charlie was he wasn't super confident around other dogs. So he would become super reactive and then react by biting other dogs. And so like, since then, I'm like, that's fine. But I really want dogs to be able to like hang out and get cookies together and not have to worry about some of those things, right? If I drop a cookie, it's not like there's going to be a big brawl.
Yeah, and there really isn't with her. If I drop a cookie, it's fine. It's very situational, which is interesting. Because, she can sit with everybody and get a cookie, no problem. And I dropped food today, and granted, it was cauliflower, so she invited him.
Well,
he goes, he can have that.
Not that important.
Right. And you guys, one of the things that you have to think about, what is important to the dog. Not everything is going to be important. So they might have long periods of time where things are fine and there's no problem, because for whatever reason, whatever's there, whatever was a thing, it was not important to them until there could be just one thing that then is all of a sudden very, very important, and they decide they're going to guard that, right? So, so a couple of things that we wanted to kind of give you information on. Well, anytime there's dog to dog interaction, you need to watch it, look at it, and keep an eye on it. And also in the beginning, when you bring in a new dog, whether it's a rescue or puppy, manage the resources, meaning food, food, or toys. And you want to keep an eye on if the dogs are sitting by you, how they handle those kind of things. So um, manage the resources. If you're going to give a chewy together, give one dog a chew, another dog a chew. You can tether them if you want, so that way they can enjoy the bone without having to worry about somebody coming in to try to get their food. So that's one way to create that harmony. Like, okay, we can all sit and chew bones together, and we don't have to worry about anybody picking them up, getting them. And when they are done, it's really important that you pick up the bones and or the food bowls so they're not laying around, because we've had situations. I haven't, but I've heard of clients that have had situations that they fight over an empty food bowl, right? So really, really important that you manage those in the beginning. Pick everything up, put it up, so then it's not an issue, right? Those are some basic things you can do, especially with the new dog. Just leaving everything around and rotating toys and making sure that if you have a young dog, don't allow the young dog to come and take anything away from the old dog, because early on the puppy license may still be in effect, and then there's going to be a day that puppy license is no longer in effect, and that's what happens, right? You have the puppy will get hurt, or the puppy will get corrected, because now what was once okay 2 months ago is not okay now, right?
Well, and like in Noah's case, right? He'll do that normally. That's just the dog that he is. He doesn't want the confrontation. So even though it's not a puppy, he'll give his toy away. But you never know when that day is where they're like, all right, that's enough, right? That's where you have those situations where you're like, I don't know what happened. He always lets go of the toy. And today he's like, not today, man. Had enough of you.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think like we've pointed out, it's like it depends on the dynamics of the dogs that are involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
right,
like, they may be tolerant. So, like the other day, like Riff was playing, and I was sitting there, and I'm like, he's doing really good. So, Tenor was laying down, and he's a little too much sometimes, and then he got all stupid with Tenor, and I heard, "Hi," and I'm like, well, you shouldn't do that. He was probably, and he's a bigger dog than him. He was very appropriate, because I know my dogs. And he was like, he corrected him, and then he comes back, and he's like, oh my God, Mom, I was so sad I got hurt. I'm like, well, you probably shouldn't have pushed so hard, right? And that's the thing. It's like, and the other thing I see, and I know you guys probably see, is when and when we get upset with the older dogs for correcting the puppy, I'm like, no, depending on the situation. It also depends on like the type of correction. Your dog, if they have a hard mouth, you're like, well, that's probably not a good correction. It probably hurt pretty bad, versus a dog who is like, gives all the warnings, right? So,
yeah. And so the other thing is, a lot of times resource guarding is an emotional situation, right? They're feeling anxious and not confident about the other dog being near the toy or anything like that. So what you want to do is change, and that's the only thing. You have to change the way the dog feels from the inside out. That's why with resource guarding with people, correcting them or really having harsh things can make it worse sometimes, right? I'm all for, like, I gave my little beagle, when she did that, a little bit of a timeout for that behavior, so she'll think twice. However, now when dogs come in and she's got a resource, I make sure she gets a toy or she has my attention and all that thing. But you really want to have somebody to help you too, right? You can do this or if you have a gate, like now I have a gate. I give her a treat. The puppy gets a treat. the pup, they get a toy. So I make sure that I put that safety there so that she enjoys that the little dog or having the puppy nearby is a good thing. It's not a problem. She's gonna get a cookie, he gets a cookie, right? But I just put the gate in between because I have a very young puppy, and I just don't want anything to happen to my young puppy at this time, right? Because it could create some issues. So those are some tips that you can do. I also you can all, like I said, I'm kind of big on tethering. So because my beagle tends to want to jump at the other dog, so tethering will help prevent that situation, right? It'll help prevent her to get away and go after the other dog, right? Again, changing the way she feels. If another dog comes in, reinforce her for not doing the bad thing and just doing the right thing. Those are some tips, right, that I myself am using.
And one of the things I do is like my dogs like toys, and I have toys around, right? Like in previous years, I didn't have a lot of stuff out because one, I had garters and then they made bad choices and stuff like that. I was very careful with stuff. So I was more controlled. Whereas now I'm like, toys can be out. And it's different because we select, like, as we get more mature in our careers, we pick for specific types of temperaments. Like, I'm super careful. I want dogs that are social with people, dogs that are good with other dogs. And I personally would rather deal with dogs that are sociable and be like, teach them more impulse control, like you don't get to say hi and so forth and all that. But I have to say that, like, I can have toys out and my other dogs have a toy. I'm like, drop it. And they'll drop it immediately. And I'm like, well, that dog wants it. And I do cater to the puppy. One, he's tiny, he's small, he's, 2 something pounds. Like, you can't crush him, even though you want to. It's not appropriate, right? So, like, I do have higher expectations of my other dogs. Even Ivy. I mean, Ivy, like, is 14 pounds. He's 2. Like, when she tries to play with him, she smashes him down to the ground and hurts him because she's so rough. So, to me, and again, Mary asked about playing trade games. And is it successful for high value resources? For my dogs, yeah, I'm going to trade them. But I will tell you, like, I think a lot of it has to do with the relationship you have with the dogs, right? Yep. Like, if they trust you, they're going to be like, you're fun, I should listen because it matters. You know what I mean? That's why I think the 3 of us are so very much into the relationship aspect of it, because truly when it comes down to life, I don't know about you, but I don't carry treats around with me. I don't carry toys around with me all the time. I want you to listen because it's a good idea, right? It's a good idea to work with me, to be with me, and so forth.
So Kathy, with tethering, like if you're in the living room, I would tether one dog to, put a dog bed by a couch or a heavy piece of furniture that they can't drag along. And you have big dogs, so something really heavy. Or you can have, if you have another person in the house, like I do, you can have that person step on the leash or whatever. And then the other dog would be, across the room, and the leashes would be long enough for them to move around, but not so long that they can get to the other. And then they would get their whatever, a bone or a Kong or whatever, and they get to chew it in the presence of the other dog. And I would make it's a special thing, whether it's a bone or a bully stick or whatever, and they would get it in that situation only in the presence of that other dog or that other situation. And then once they're finished with it, you put everything away, and then you can untether them, and so that way they can have that, so they can share that time. You don't have to worry. And so I tell people who have a chance to watch TV, you can do that during during a particular show that and they can just sit and enjoy, and that'll be their time to enjoy that chew or enjoy that time. And over time, you probably won't have to tether them, right? They'll be able to enjoy so that they don't wander over. The labs are terrible about that. My lab will finish hers right away and run over and get the other dogs. Um, so usually, and so, and she's, but now she's very manageable. So I can tell her, no, 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 come back over here. You stay by me while the other dog finishes.
Yeah, but how old is she now?
She's 5.
There you go.
But in the beginning, I had to encourage her to do that, because she, she would definitely want to go over and get it. So I do. So with her, that was pretty easy. So now her, the shepherd, and when Chacha was alive, they were able to chew bones together and all that, and it usually was not. It was never a problem. They never had an altercation about it. But that's how I started them, because especially her, because she's so foodie. The 2 shepherds weren't as much, so it wasn't as much of a problem. So now I am actually going to have to set that up with my beagle, and I did in the office, and because her big trigger is if she's sitting next to me and another dog comes in, so I will then reinforce her for staying there and not worrying about it. And then, so again, she has no doggy skills, but I like to use the tethering a lot for those things, because it takes you out of it. A lot of times when we get so much involved, because that's what's hard, right? You're in the middle, or you step in, or whatever. You're always having to do that. So I'd like for them to be able to be calm and relaxed around, again, changing the way they feel about the other dog in the house, right? In that situation with resources, right?
Well, and I think the other thing with the tether is dogs are not dumb, right? They know if I'm in a crate, I can talk a bunch of crap to you, and then you open the crate door and they're like,
Ooh,
Just kidding.
time, right? So the tether really allows free space,
right,
but not full freedom of space, right? And I never quite got that in the beginning, but it's like even an X pen that they could jump over, they still know there's a barrier there.
right.
Well, I'll tell you, like,
But
Riff,
I have big dogs as well. Like
Go ahead, Joanne. You got frozen.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I totally understand it. I just have never done it because I don't want to drill a hole in my wall, right? To like put a carabiner. I just don't. And there's no furniture that the Doberman couldn't drag around. So
well, I have a chair and a recliner, and that's what I used for the lab, and I had enough of the chair, that's enough. And then I have an elliptical machine that that's there as well. So I was able to use those 2 things to create that harmony, because over time, then it is harmony, right? They get chew time. We get to do this chewy thing. I get mine, you get yours. It's lovely. And so this is where I'm like with Jive and Tango. They are great together. I don't have to worry about it. But now I have to, redo again with the Beagle to create that space for her to gain that confidence and that resiliency. But this is a new behavior that just showed up a couple of weeks ago. So I'm like, okay. So I need to work on it and address it. And because yes, I can't have her doing that. And a lot of what she's doing is testing. So I want to make sure I address it early before it becomes a much more serious problem.
So there's a group called P-Vibe, Positive Vibe, that I saw. And what they did was they had it was like a flat board, and then it was like a tether in the center. And that way, so if you didn't have a way to tether the dog to something, it was like they had to be in the center of it. The problem is with that is you really have to know who your dog is, because there are some dogs that are not okay with restriction.
Right.
They actually panic.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I found that something to be nice to help the dogs. And then you can move the board around, because the weight of the dog holds it down, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. But a lot of in their case, P-Vibe, they would take rescue dogs and work them into Frisbee and stuff. And they did a lot of stationing and tethering onto something, right? Mm-hmm. Like a bed or what have you. So yeah, it was interesting. I found it interesting the way that they did it. Like Suzanne does a really real relaxation protocol right? And there are some dogs that need a point of reference because they've learned some different behaviors about what it means to be calm, cool, and collected in a stationary position. So I found that that helped some dogs like have a focal point to help them. So if you're like experiencing that, I think it's just really relative to the individual dog, depending on their history.
Yeah.
Quite honestly.
And so for me, my labs were the concern because they would finish things and go on and that's I don't allow that. And once they're done, and if everybody gets a chew toy or whatever they get, they finish it, and then I pick pick those things up like the Kong. I use frozen Kongs tons all the time. So like the lab and Jive and Tango can do their Kongs together, no problem at all the time. They don't have any issue, right? The Beagle, now we're going to have to kind of work on getting one, tethering her, having the puppy, my puppy, have it so that they can be together in that space in a more positive way. So yeah, it's a process and it's a pain in the neck, but it's worth doing because like now I can give Jive and Tango their Kongs. I don't have to worry about it. Like I know there's nothing going to happen, but it took time. I made sure that they had a good experience and a good introduction to that chewing and all that, so that way it wouldn't be an issue later on, right? And the Beagle, like I said, she doesn't have a lot of dog social skills, so it's going to take probably a little longer because she doesn't have that. Where Jive and Tango are puppies together.
Yeah. And, that being said, I will throw this out there, right? Sometimes we can't fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have dogs that have history of fighting or decent fights over resources, right? If you work real hard on the tethering point, you can maybe get them, but I would never be letting my guard down. If I had dogs that really, truly had serious issues, I'm going to do kind of what Kathy said, right? Like, there's a gate, there's a crate, there's another room. We're just not, not that I wouldn't try and work on it, but I'm never going to trust those dogs.
Right. And sometimes the truth is, Kathy, when I can't really watch, when they were young and I couldn't watch them, I couldn't monitor that interaction. Oh yeah. They went into a crate or a different room until I felt 100% sure. And so for like the Beagle and the puppy, they get their stuff, but they're separated when I can't. Because you can't watch them all the time. It's just not practical. So I do, management is a good thing too for those things, to not have that problem, right? And like Joanne says, and sometimes if you don't feel 100% that you can trust it, like I can trust Jive and Tango together, but I don't know, I may never be able to trust the Beagle, but I'm going to give her a good enough experience that she makes better choices as she gets more mature and more confident. And with the puppy, I want to make sure that he also learns good social skills so it doesn't become an issue later on.
Yeah, because remember, prevention is half the key. If they get to practice that behavior, it's going to solidify for them, and that might be a problem for life. So.
Right, and that's a really good point, right? You have to manage it while you're training it. You cannot just. You have to definitely manage stuff early on. Like, don't allow it to happen. Like Jive and Tango have never had an altercation over resources, but I didn't set that up. I always managed it until they were comfortable 100%. So yeah, I didn't. And if I couldn't watch them, and there were times I couldn't, they went into a crate or a different room, and that's that, right? So you have to manage it, like Joanne said, in order to prevent the behaviors so that you don't have the problem in the first place. And then you can start working on it. Like my little Beagle, I already know it's a issue. So yeah, she eats in a crate when I can't watch her. And if I'm able to, then I have that she can eat while the puppy's there, and I can manage that situation pretty well, and it's fine. But if I can't do that, oh yeah, she goes in a crate, he goes in a crate, they eat there, and life is good. And I don't have to, and so they don't practice that behavior, right? Yeah, I do crate, and I'm crate feeding the puppy a lot too because he's young and I want him to be happy in the crate. So, too, and then and the Beagle was spent the first year of her life in a crate. So now that she's experienced life outside the crate, she's not so crazy about being in the crate. So now, so we're going back to doing some training to keep her, because a crate will be part of her life no matter what for the rest of her life, because she lives in my house, and we go places, we do things, and so crating is a big thing for us. So we just want to get, and she is comfortable most of the time, but when she wants out, she wants out. So we're working on that. So yeah, and for the puppy, I want him to be happy in a crate, and there's no way easier way to make that happen than having him eat in the crate. So pretty easy in that way. But like you said, so you have to manage it while you're training it. And again, one of the things I wanted to remind you, I think I mentioned it before. If you have a young dog, don't let the young dogs take stuff from the older dogs. Just don't do it. I think people think, oh, it's so cute. No, it is not cute. And it's not going to be a good thing for the dog, because if they think they can do it with that dog, they think they can do it with all dogs. And then that's when you have problems and altercations. And the majority of the dog fights that we see or experience is over resources, whether it's food or the
Humans.
house or
Or humans,
humans.
Yep.
spaces. Yep.
So those are most of the altercations we have, right? In dog fighting or dog altercations, right? It's over resources a lot of times, right?
I think
And to be fair, sorry, Lisa, and to be fair, humans fight over resources all the time.
Mhm.
So there you go.
I think too, like what's interesting, like if I had a German Shepherd that was resource guarding me, that is way different than having a little 2-pounder saying, "Don't touch me." Right. And I think a lot of times we allow that. And I don't know about you guys, but coming from both ends of like I haven't had giant dogs, but larger dogs versus smaller dogs. I've seen it. Like my Pomeranian Zach, he's like rah rah, and she would get super like ridiculous with other dogs. And some people are like, oh, he doesn't want. And you've seen that with like dogs resource guarding against people, their person against other people, and they're like, well, just don't come near me. I'm like, put them down on the ground, let them like deal. Like, what are you going to guard now? Right. And I think that is something else that's different. Like what we tolerate with larger larger dogs versus like smaller dogs is way different. He's chewing on a cord. That's bad. So,
Yes.
so
We don't want to recreate Christmas Vacation in the dog
Yes.
happy on under a tree.
right. So, but yeah, so it's like I think that's something that's different. Like people have so much more tolerance for little dogs. But if
Oh,
it were
yeah.
a German Shepherd or a Doberman, you'd be like, heck no, ain't cool. We're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's interesting information, like to like say if it's not good for, even though it's a little dog. I mean, don't get me wrong, like my little dog, I allow certain things, but at the same time, if you're going to be a jerk and try to be inappropriate to a bigger dog, well, you're risking your life. It's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if it's not okay for a larger dog to do it, it shouldn't be okay for a little dog. So
Yeah, definitely.
Don't squeeze him so hard.
oh, it's so crazy.
So cute.
He hates it. Like, he hates it.
Yep. All right, guys. I hope that was helpful for those of you who are, because I know there's some of you that are watching that are potentially thinking about getting another dog. Management is key in the beginning until things get calmed down and you don't have, and you can kind of see how things shake out. So those are, and again, you have to change the way the dogs feel from the inside out, not so much from, you're not going to manage it with human intervention all the time. And then, like I said, tethering is I found it very helpful, and gates and all that are also helpful in the beginning as you're working through some of that stuff. So, all right, guys, thank you all for tuning in. We are not going to be meeting next week, but we'll have hopefully we'll meet the weekend after that. So have a great couple of weeks. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.